Hey everyone, welcome back to Apollo Art Analysis. This episode we're going to be checking out a piece actually by an unknown artist. This episode we're going to be talking about pixel art, we're going to talk about the wisdom of the past, and we're also going to be talking about the origins of Greco-Roman architecture. So let's jump right into it. So whenever you first see this work, really met with kind of various architectural builds set under this ethereal cosmic sky here. Your first impression is likely one of awe as we stand before such an ascendant site here. And so you'll notice, of course, the impact of texture here gives this incredible sense of realism. We see this really immerses us directly within the scene before us. It does this quite masterfully, right? And what you'll notice, of course, you have these kind of shadows. Those imply a sense of depth within that. So we have this kind of illusion working within the work before us. That's incredibly common with art in general. And so in the realm of color, we really note this analogous scheme really as the foundation of the work, right? We see this blue, we see this kind of purplish pink, a little bit of green as well. But aside from that, we do have a very rare accent of, say, that gold and a little bit up there as well. So the foundation here is analogous, so it's going to blend together quite nicely. It does feel really balanced, and you have the lightest hints of a little bit of variation within that, so it doesn't feel too jarring. It feels incredibly balanced within this. So I think this also contributes to that sense of divinity, right? The sense of this kind of ornate luxury that we see within the work before us here. And so after a short time with this work, you'll see this kind of lone frog standing, waving at us deep within the work at hand. It's kind of strange. He's standing upon the top of our temple's pediment here. But aside from this, we ask ourselves who this subject is or why they're waving directly at us. A really interesting question. If y'all know what this original work is from, please let me know. If you know the original artist, please let me know. I'd love to credit that. So whenever we look at this work, we really see two main regions within the work in hand, right? You have kind of you have culture, and then you kind of have the chaos. So you see these two kind of realms juxtaposed, right? You have kind of civilization, and then you have the great unknown or the divine, two different ways you could surely look at that. And you see chaos as the wilderness, the great unknown, the kind of vast, infinite void that you kind of look out into whenever you look at the ocean, whenever you look into the sky, or kind of an endless forest. There's so many different things you can point to there. When we talk about culture, what we mean, of course, is civilization, a torch in the middle of the dark wilderness. Those really mean when we talk about culture. We talk about, the walls of civilization when you leave kind of the chaotic nature, the unknown, and you're finally back within the tribe. It's kind of what I'm talking about here when I talk about chaos in contrast to culture. And so what you'll see here, of course, one of the most defining elements of this work is going to be this cosmic backing. It draws the eye instantly and invigorates the work with a bit of magic as well. Actually, I brought one of Pixel Dancer's piece. This is a original pixel artist there. And what you'll see, I wanted to kind of reference not only this color palette, but this kind of cosmic vibe in pixel art that we see here. So we kind of have this vibe as well, right? This, of course, is underwater, but we have that kind of cosmic underwater, very surreal. We absolutely love that work here. I wanted to compare those two color palettes, kind of show you guys what I mean by this cosmic sky. Of course, it feels incredibly magic. We have this kind of, I wouldn't say pixie dust. You have that kind of nebula that is incredibly reminiscent of the divine. And so incredibly important. One of the most defining elements of this work is going to be that sky. Then, of course, your eye is drawn to the main culture beneath that. So what you'll notice here, of course, it's incredibly ornate. You have statues, you have, carvings, you have all of these decorations. And aside from that, of course, it's incredibly ornate. And, whenever you see ornate architecture or, of course, art in general, it almost always conveys a sense of elevated status. So we see this within the work before us here, for a city-state or any type of culture to be able to, get all those materials together and to create something on top of that, it takes quite a bit of work. So that's what we mean when we talk about that elevated status. And so when we talk about architecture like this, we always have to talk about the Greco-Roman origins, right? And so it truly originated with kind of the Minoans and the Egyptians, but the Romans, for example, then took inspiration from the Greeks, who then, of course, took inspiration from the Egyptians and the Minoans here. So we're going to take a quick look at some references. We're going to reference these columns as well as the architecture, see what we can learn here. All right, so I brought two references here. Maybe we can learn a bit deeper about the work before us. So what you'll see here is going to be one of the best surviving temples from the Roman period in France. And then here I have kind of a layout of so many different columns that we can reference here. What you'll notice, of course, almost all of these columns have these kind of vertical textures going along that. We call those fluted columns. And the fluted column is incredibly important, especially in the context of its Egyptian origins. So the Egyptians, for example, you talk about the Nile a lot when we talk about the Egyptians, and upon the Nile are a bunch of reeds. And we see reeds, we're talking a little bit about nature and chaos earlier. So, the reeds can be the unknown. If you go into the reeds, you might get bit by an alligator. There's so many different things you could talk to there. But the original columns were meant to kind of beads together, of course, the chaos all put together in a solid structure within, which then, of course, supports the surrounding structure there. It's incredibly interesting. You take the chaos of the natural world and you're able to kind of construct that into something solid, a piece of art, which then holds up a shelter. That's incredibly symbolic, incredibly metaphoric as well. That shows really the power and the status of the city-state that it created that. So it's incredibly important to talk about those Egyptian origins, especially when we talk about the column. But what the Greeks did is they then went even further with that. For example, the Parthenon, we see that, of course, it's incredibly decayed. I don't have a picture of that here, but, it takes a very similar layout where you have these columns supporting that structure above that. And you'll also find an incredible sense of balance, right? It's not top heavy by any means. It feels incredibly balanced. You have that kind of triangular order. So many different things you could point to there. But the Greco-Roman, of course, an incredible amount of inspiration from the Egyptians and the Minoans before them. But then after that, with things like neoclassicism, we see a revivification of that. There's so many different things you could point to. So, Greco-Roman architecture, then, of course, the origins from Egypt and Minoans, incredibly important, especially when we're talking about the work before us. All right, and so when we talk about this kind of ornate luxury, we talk about status, we are also talking about this kind of highest ideal, right? When you look at this, these are temples that are dedicated to the gods. So, whenever you create something that's extremely, extremely beautiful, you're trying to create your best to present to the gods. That can also be drawn as a metaphor in so many different ways, right? If you want to present yourself to the gods, if you want to find your highest ideal, if you want to reach the top of the mountain, you're going to have to put yourself together in a very harmonious order, right? You're going to have to do the best things. You're going to have to sacrifice some things to build up others. There's so many different things you could point to, but there's no doubt that we really want to have our highest ideal, especially when we're presenting it to the realm of the gods. So we see that here, incredibly ornate, incredibly luxurious. It takes a lot of time to create things like this. We're trying to present our best to the realm of the gods. Of course, we see the realm of the gods takes up so much of the work, even a little bit more than half of the space here. There certainly is an emphasis on that within the work at hand. So really hope y'all enjoyed today. The final thing I want to talk about, of course, we talked about, origins of architecture, so many different things, really thousands and thousands of years of development. But when we think about that, we really have to ask ourselves how much wisdom can be found in the past and how much wisdom is really ripe for revivification. I want you guys to ask that question. Going into the future, there is this kind of unknown, there is this uncertainty. But what the wisdom of the past provides is a kind of boat in that kind of sea of uncertainty, right? You can have a little bit of wisdom from the past, of course. The wisdom of the past was well earned through hundreds, even thousands of years of discrimination, bloodshed, and of course, cultural development. So I think that's incredibly important. We have to look at the wisdom of the past if we want some type of guide into the future, because eventually, if we get into the future and we've lost the wisdom of the past, then we're going to be quite clueless. We're going to have to relearn those incredibly well fought. Of course, so many people died to learn the things from the past. So we really have to revive that. And not only revive that, but we have to preserve it through time so that we don't lose the wisdom of the past. So I really hope y'all enjoyed today. Absolutely love this piece. Of course, the Greco-Roman architecture, the realm of the divine. We talked about, ornate status. We talked about the origins of the reeded architecture or the fluted architecture within the Egyptian culture. So many different things we talked about today. I truly hope y'all enjoyed. Like I said earlier, if y'all know the original artist of this work or the origin of this work, please give us a shout out at apolloartexchange@gmail.com or leave a comment down below. Either way, I promise you I will see it. I really want to give the original artist some credits here. So I hope y'all enjoyed. My name is Apollo. This was Apollo Art Analysis. On the next episode. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to support our work directly, please check out our Apollo community tokens. Apollo Art Exchange is an ecosystem of art appreciation which elevates artists each and every day. Thanks for listening.